My wife didn't just betray me. She tried to erase me completely. She wanted my kids, my money, and even my name, and she wasn't working alone. The man helping her was once my closest friend. What they didn't realize was that the game they were playing had rules I'd written long before they even thought to cheat. And before it was over, they'd understand exactly what that meant. Have you ever been betrayed so deeply that it forced you to fight for everything you love? If you have, you know how it burns. Feel free to share your story below. Someone out there might need the reminder that integrity can still win. My name's Logan Cross. I'm 46 years old, and this is how I turned the biggest betrayal of my life into a battle for truth, justice, and my children. That night, I sat alone in the dim light of my basement office, surrounded by the quiet hum of servers. On one of the monitors, a high-definition video looped over and over, footage I'd pulled from Deanna's supposedly encrypted laptop. There she was, draped across a velvet armchair in a hotel suite that screamed money, laughing as Blake Hoffman filled her glass with champagne. The video didn't need sound. Her body language told me everything. The way she tilted her head back, the way her hand lingered on Blake's arm, the way he leaned in close and whispered something that made her smile like she'd already won. A diamond bracelet sparkled on her wrist, one I'd never seen before, one I definitely hadn't bought. Under the soft hotel lighting, it caught the glow like a trophy. And when Blake's lips moved, I could read the words even without audio. A new life. I stared at the screen for a long while, my face unreadable. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a handful of pixels. Deanna had always been ambitious, but this was more than ambition. It was strategy. I switched screens and opened a folder I'd decrypted the night before. Each file another nail in the coffin of the life I thought we'd built. Lines of encrypted text messages filled the monitor. Cold, calculated, deliberate. Blake's words appeared first, and Deanna's reply hit harder than anything I'd prepared myself for. Caleb and Sophie barely know him anyway. He chose work over family years ago. We'll make sure they understand that. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. I'd been betrayed before. Co-workers who sold out confidential data, clients who lied through their teeth. But this was different. This cut deep. They weren't just cheating on me. They were rewriting my story, painting me as the villain in my own children's eyes, trying to erase the years I'd spent keeping them safe, keeping all of us secure. I read her messages again and again. Each word sliced deeper than the footage itself. She wasn't just leaving me. She was engineering my downfall with the same precision she once used to close multi-million-dollar real estate deals. My gaze drifted around the basement office, and for the first time, I really saw my home. Upstairs, the brownstone was packed with designer furniture she'd picked out, art she'd hung, rugs she'd imported from Italy. None of it felt like me. Not the man who grew up in foster care, who built a business from scratch, who believed in practicality over flash. Even the family photos on the wall, they looked perfect, but now they felt hollow. Carefully staged moments from a life that might have never been real. I couldn't help but wonder how much of our marriage was genuine and how much was just a performance, for her family, for Blake, for everyone watching. Turning back to the screen, my jaw tightened, not with rage, but with focus. Rage was messy. Rage got people caught. I'd built my career on the opposite: precision, control, strategy. If Deanna and Blake wanted a game, they were about to learn they'd picked the wrong player. I shut off the monitor, and the room fell into heavy silence. My hands moved with calm, practiced motions as I unlocked a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were months of records, bank statements, property documents, private investigation notes. All the proof I'd been quietly gathering long before I even confirmed the affair. My instincts had been right all along. Deanna had trusted me completely when it came to finances. She never read the fine print, never questioned the forms I gave her. That trust, the one thing she'd never doubted, was about to become the most expensive mistake of her life. I opened the folder to the first page. Staring back at me was a glossy photo clipped to the top. Deanna and Blake, smiling for the cameras at a charity gala months earlier. Behind those perfect smiles was the truth, betrayal, greed, and the end of everything I thought we were. For a brief moment, I let myself feel it. The sting of losing the woman I thought I knew, the betrayal of a man I once called my friend, the fear of what this would do to my kids. Then I shut it all down. This wasn't the time for emotion. This was the time to prepare. And preparation was what I did best. I closed the folder, my expression hardening into the same calm determination that had earned me respect in the security world. Deanna and Blake had made their move. Now it was my turn. Back in 2013, before all the lies, before life turned into a maze of half-truths and whispers, I was still figuring out civilian life. After 12 years in military intelligence, I'd traded covert ops for corporate security. That's when I met Deanna Clark, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone turn their head. Our connection was instant, almost reckless. I'd never been the kind of man to believe in love at first sight. But there was something about her confidence, her drive, that sharp spark in her eyes. Within a year, we were married. Friends said it was too fast. My military buddies warned me that people who climb that high that quickly usually want something more than love. But I didn't listen. I didn't care. Michael Grant leaned back in his chair like a man sitting on a throne he didn't earn. His suit screamed money. His watch probably cost more than my first car. He slid a thick stack of legal papers across the polished table, his smirk never fading. "Let's make this simple," he said, tapping the folder with a manicured finger. "Deanna will retain full custody of the twins. She keeps the house, the vehicles, and a majority of your consulting firm's profits. It's the cleanest way to end this, Troy. You sign, we walk away civilized. You don't, well, we'll litigate. Aggressively. And I assure you, you'll lose." I looked at him for a long second, not angry, not even surprised. I'd seen that same confident look on enemies in interrogation rooms. Men who thought they understood control until they didn't. I picked up the papers, flipped through a few pages, and let out a quiet breath. Not a sigh, more like amusement. Then I set the stack back on the table, perfectly aligned with the edge. Michael Grant's smile faltered just a little. "Something funny?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, leaning back in my chair. "You think this is my first ambush?" He blinked, thrown off by my calm. Most men in my position would have started shouting or pleading. But I'd spent 12 years in intelligence. Men like him didn't intimidate me, they entertained me. Without another word, I reached into my leather portfolio and pulled out a plain white envelope. No markings, no labels, just clean, simple, and heavy in a way that made his eyes flick toward it. I placed it gently on the table, sliding it halfway toward him. "Before we talk about custody," I said evenly, "you might want to read what's inside that." He hesitated. "What is this?" "Context," I said. He opened the flap, pulled out a few neatly folded documents, and started to read. I watched his confidence drain like color from a photograph. The arrogance slipped from his face, replaced by something else, calculation. Inside were copies of the sealed family court records, the donation transfers, and a handful of time-stamped photos linking the Harrisons to that long-buried DUI case. He didn't finish reading. He didn't have to. I leaned forward slightly. "Here's how this really works, Michael Grant. You take those papers back to Deanna. You tell her she'll get a fair settlement, she'll see the kids, and I'll stay civil. But if she pushes for war, if she tries to take my children or my company, I open every one of those files. I don't care if it takes me down with her. The difference is, I'll still walk away knowing the truth got out." The room went dead silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning felt distant. Michael Grant cleared his throat, forcing composure back into his voice. "You're bluffing." I smiled, not wide, just enough to make him wonder. "That's the problem with men like you," I said. "You assume the quiet ones are bluffing. We're not." He stared at me, weighing his options, then slowly gathered the papers back into their folder. "I'll relay your message," he muttered. "Do that," I said, standing up. "And tell Deanna one more thing." He looked up. "What's that?" I paused at the door. "The game she started? It's not over. But from now on, she doesn't make the rules." Then I walked out, leaving him alone with the evidence, and the realization that he'd just sat across from a man who had already planned his next 10 moves. Michael Grant shifted in his seat, clearly uneasy. He could tell where this was heading. I didn't say a word. I just waited, giving her the silence to hang herself with. Then, suddenly, Vanessa Reed slammed the pen down so hard it rattled against the table. "You want the truth?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through glass. "Fine. You were never good enough for me." Her words came out like venom. "I married you because you were useful, because you had money, connections, a name that opened doors. But underneath it all, You were still just a security guard pretending to be something more. I outgrew you a long time ago. I didn't flinch. I just watched her, calm and still, letting her spill every piece of poison she'd been saving. When she was done, I gave a slow nod. And yet, I said quietly, I just took everything you ever cared about. Her face went red. She didn't reply. Her breathing grew short, unsteady. I gathered the signed papers from the table and slid them neatly into my leather folder. But before I stood up, I took out another envelope and placed it in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, suspicion already in her voice. "Consider it a parting gift," I said. She opened it, and her hands froze. Inside were photos. Ryan Calloway, the man she'd betrayed me for, boarding a private jet with a woman half his age, their fingers laced together like a promise. Another shot showed him at a bank, pulling out wads of cash from an offshore account in both their names. The last photo caught him on a yacht, champagne in hand, already celebrating his freedom. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through them. This can't be real," she whispered, though even she didn't sound convinced. "It's real," I said evenly. "He emptied the accounts 2 days ago. By now, he's probably sitting in Monaco, drinking to his new life. Whatever he promised you, it's gone. Just like everything else." That was the moment her walls collapsed. Vanessa Reed buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as a quiet sob escaped. The room went still, just her muffled crying and the soft hum of the ceiling fan. Michael Grant turned away, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't move. I stood, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked to the door. Before leaving, I looked back just once. "You wanted power, Vanessa Reed," I said. "Now you have nothing left to fight for." Then I walked out, leaving her there with the signed papers and the crushing weight of her own choices. The fallout came faster than I ever expected. Within a week, Eleanor Calloway had resigned from the bench. Her public statement blamed personal health reasons, but everyone knew better. The leaked court documents had kicked off a full federal investigation, and whispers about the Moretti case were spreading like wildfire. The once untouchable Harrison name was crumbling. Charles Calloway's hotel empire, a dynasty that had seemed bulletproof, became the next target. Federal agents froze several of his main accounts after linking them to campaign finance fraud and money laundering. Investors panicked, stocks plummeted overnight, and the media swarmed. The Navarro family, armed with their own legal team, filed lawsuits that tangled nearly every major Harrison asset. Years of influence and power were unraveling, and I hadn't spoken a single word to the press. I didn't need to. The truth, once unleashed, did the damage all by itself. Vanessa Reed's downfall was quieter, but no less devastating. The divorce settlement and custody agreements had left her boxed in financially, and with Blake's betrayal draining their accounts, she had nothing left. Within months, she sold her cars, her jewelry, even the small investments she'd hidden away. The invitations to high society galas stopped coming. People who once fought to sit beside her now ignored her calls. Eventually, she took a job as a mid-level real estate agent in some suburban firm. No charity galas, no designer dresses, just open houses and commission checks. Sometimes, I'd hear about her through mutual friends. They'd say she was polite now, even humble, though the old pride still lingered in her posture. But for the first time in years, she had no power to wield, no one to manipulate. She lived on the outskirts of the world she used to rule. As for Ryan Calloway, I made sure his fall wasn't quiet. With the help of a few contacts from my intelligence days, I handed over detailed records of his offshore accounts and shady business deals. Within weeks, his assets were frozen and his name hit every international watch list. He tried to run, bouncing from one country to another, but the walls kept closing in. The woman he'd left with ditched him the second the money disappeared. When the story finally hit the news, Blake was described as a fugitive, broke, hiding under fake names, and living in rented apartments paid for with whatever cash he had left. I didn't celebrate. Late at night, sitting in my office, I'd think about how easy it would have been to let anger drive me, to crush them just for the satisfaction. But that was never the point. It wasn't about revenge. It was about balance, about making sure the people who had destroyed others for their own gain finally faced justice. The Harrisons had built an empire on lies, and in the end, those lies devoured them. For me, justice didn't need to be loud. It was quiet, steady, and absolute. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. 3 months later, the world looked different. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and I stood on the porch watching Caleb and Sophie race across the backyard. Their laughter filled the air, bright, carefree, pure. It had been a long time since I'd heard it like that. They didn't know everything that had happened, the court battles, the threats, the games behind closed doors. All they knew was that their dad had fought for them, and that was enough. Connor stopped to catch his breath, red-faced and grinning. Madison shrieked and jumped onto the swing, her hair flying behind her. I smiled, a quiet sense of pride washing over me. This peace, was what I'd fought for. Not vengeance, not victory. Just this moment. Life had changed in other ways, too. Blackstone Security, the company I'd built before the Harrisons tried to take it from me, was thriving again. The scandal had spread, and suddenly clients who'd once hesitated were lining up at my door. My name, once dragged through the mud, now carried more weight than ever. I hired a new team, people I trusted, and for the first time, I started turning down work. I didn't need to live behind screens anymore. The long nights had been replaced with family dinners, school projects, and evenings tossing a baseball with Connor. I could have kept going after the Harrisons, finished off every last remnant of their empire, but I didn't. I'd already won the only battle that mattered. Patricia was disgraced. Gregory's empire was collapsing. Blake was a ghost. And Vanessa Reed. Vanessa Reed was just another person trying to live with her mistakes. In my office, one photograph still sat on the shelf, a picture of Vanessa Reed back when we were a family. I didn't keep it out of love. It was a reminder that trust is something you earn, not something you give away freely. As the sun dipped low, I stepped off the porch and joined the kids in the yard. Connor tossed me the baseball, and Madison cheered when I caught it. For the first time in years, the ground beneath me felt steady. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, built on patience, sacrifice, and the quiet determination to protect what mattered most. Some betrayals try to take everything from you, but sometimes they leave you with exactly what you need.